The NFL Scouting Combine week is officially upon us. And tonight, we'll talk about a day one prospect and a round two prospect that are my early picks to be the Cowboys' best potential targets in the 2024 NFL Draft. And we'll talk the latest about the franchise tag and the Dallas Cowboys. Here we go. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network. With a lot more content coming your way, make sure that you check out atozsports.com/Dallas. And as always, do me a favor and hit the like button for me if you enjoy the show. Welcome, everyone, on a Monday night. I hope that you guys had a fantastic start to your week. And tonight, we'll talk about a little bit about the Cowboys and the NFL Draft. Now, as you know, and I won't shy away from this, I'm not the draft expert, the draft guru in the sense that I'm going to spend thousands of hours diving deep into the film, but I'll sure as hell leverage my colleagues' work, which I really admire, man. James Foster over at A to Z Sports. We've got Destin Adams. We've got Tyler Browning. We've got a lot of good people who catch up on the NFL Draft. And then I'll dig in several prospects that I start hearing that, hey, the Cowboys should be interested in this guy. And then I dive in just to know what people are talking about and to maybe have some takes there, here and there, where I agree or disagree with some of these guys. But we're doing quite the exercise over on A to Z Sports, where we're picking the best possible prospect for the Cowboys in each of the rounds, right, for the NFL Draft. And we're doing this for most NFL teams as well on the website, in case you're interested in checking that out. But I've got two picks for the Cowboys in round one and round two. Not exactly a mock draft, but just two guys that, one, I would love to see the Cowboys pick come April. And these are guys that I've actually watched some tape on them. And then number two, some players that I do have some questions entering the NFL Scouting Combine that I believe will be answered for the most part in Indianapolis. So we'll talk about that. Then later on the show, we'll talk about Tony Pollard, not expected to be tagged by the Cowboys. We'll react to that. And first, let me say hi very quickly to you all in the chat. We've got Katharina. We've got Mark Aaron. We've got Toxic Tom. We've got Joe Gonzalez as well. Over on YouTube, we also have Gregory. We do have Juan Daniel over on Facebook. Jameson. We've got a lot of people here on the show for tonight, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen in and talk some football with me. Now, round one, man, I've talked about him already. This is one of the first guys that I watched ahead of the 2024 NFL Draft. My best draft target for the Cowboys in round one. And by the way, I'm trying to make these ones realistic prospects, right? Players who are likely to be there. For example, I would love Jackson Powers Johnson on the team. And we might still be in that wave of the post Senior Bowl hype, and it might die off a little bit, but it sure sounds like the league also likes Powers Johnson almost as much as media and fans do, right after dominating in the Senior Bowl. And we've had several people basically quote sources on Powers Johnson going in the first round, and maybe not going top 15, but definitely not escaping the first round. So I'm assuming Powers Johnson is not in the mix here, who I would love in Dallas, just because I love the idea of getting a nasty physical center in Dallas who could be an upgrade over Tyler Viadish. I've talked about this several times here on the show. But I do have Troy Fautanu from Washington as my top target for round one of the 2024 NFL Draft. There are several reasons why. Number one is the fact that I straight up like Fautanu. Now, disclaimer, and I talked about quoting James Foster, who is our film expert over at A to Z Sports. Foster is not that high. Like, he's lower than consensus on Fautanu. As you can see on the screen right now, he's his 46th overall prospect, and he has a 4th round grade on Fautanu, which I was surprised by. And basically, the concerns for Foster are that he struggles in the run game. He calls him a poor run blocker that gets out leveraged and falls off blocks consistently. And he also points out that he gets bitten inside consistently as well. I was a little bit impressed by Foster's take on Fautanu. I again admire his work, so he's definitely probably onto something. And I believe Foster is on the rise as an NFL draft analyst, by the way. But he does also admit that this guy is impressive when he's pass protecting. Like, impressive. And what I mean by that is, and I've talked about this a little bit on the show before, but maybe not in depth, he just moves like he's ready for the NFL. He's one of those players that one of the things that they teach you about offensive linemen right away is that before you even get into the hands and how they are used, you gotta win the reps with your feet. And I think Fautanu does that at a very consistent level. He is explosive off of his stance, whether it's a 2-point stance or a 3-point stance. He can get in position very quickly. I don't think he turns his shoulders a whole lot. Some people might disagree on that, but I haven't seen Fautanu turn his shoulders at a rate to which I would be concerned by and basically give the edges a corner to turn around in. I think now you get into the hand usage, and man, it is violent. And I've talked about this with Sky, but it is smooth violence. Like, this is somebody who is violent while making it seem effortless. You looked at Tyler Smith a couple of years ago, right? You looked at his Tulsa tape, and this was a nasty offensive lineman that would push around players and just put some fun plays on tape for you. But you could see like how his game depended on the violence in a lot of ways. Not exactly with Fautanu. He just knows what he's doing. He does the snatch trap at a very, very high rate, but he's so consistent with it, right? Where he just swats the hands off of the defensive lineman off of him and sends them to the ground. And I remember watching the first game for him. I think it was the Utah game. I'm not sure. And then I moved on to the Michigan game. And I thought, man, he's not going to be able to do this to the Wolverine defensive line, right? And then he goes and does exactly that. Fautanu, in other words, to me, is somebody that I'm good with playing him year one. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting because you get into the whole where do you play him debate, which is why I'm excited about his scouting combine coming up. Not only are we going to get measurements for Fautanu, who right now ranks in the 22nd percentile for height, and he's pretty much 70th percentile in weight, and does have good arm length, especially for a guard. But people have pointed out his height as an issue, and maybe his arm length if he's going to play tackle. But he does check the box as a 34-inch arm player, according to several websites. We're going to get official measurements on him, though, in the combine. He didn't go to the Senior Bowl, even though he was invited. So I'm looking forward to seeing the official measurements for Fautanu, where we can basically get a response on whether or not he could play tackle. But I'm mostly looking forward to hearing how scouts and players and coaches, think of this guy, right? Because you look at Fautanu, and I understand why you look at the size and you're like, you look at the size and you're like, hey, this guy could play guard better than he could tackle. But I'm also watching the tape and being like, man, I don't know. He might hold his own as a tackle because he's got the arms and he might not have the height. But I'm not sure I care too much about that when he can check that box for the arms. And as I said, man, like his movement is top tier, absolutely. Toxic says, Mo, your description of players is like in Moneyball, and Bean says it sounds like you're selling jeans. Ron's mad. He has a clean swing. The bat has a pop, says Toxic Tom. Man, but hey, not every player has all of this movement, is what I would basically say to that. Now, parentheses, Moneyball is an amazing movie. an even better book. And just shout out Michael Lewis, who I know had a controversial book lately. I haven't read that one, but both The Big Short and Moneyball are amazing books. But I would disagree in the sense that I wouldn't say this about all players. I don't think all of these players would have, the top tier rate of fit movement and the snatch trap and all that. I wouldn't say that about all players at all. Now, he is my top guy. I do have one concern that I do approach in my article for the website, and it's this: if you're going, and again, I know we don't believe in the all-in approach from the Cowboys, but let's change the phrasing around it. Let's say that we do know that the Cowboys are gonna want to go into year one, into 2024, year one, for whoever they pick in the first round and whoever they pick this year, wanting to win now, right? And ideally, you don't have a starting spot open for Fautanu, in my opinion, in 2024. And I do wonder how that plays into the Cowboys' decision. Now, this is true for Fautanu and pretty much any other offensive lineman who is not going to play center, provided that you re-sign Tyron Smith, who we don't know if they're going to re-sign. I think the likelihood is high for a Tyron Smith return. I do think they're going to have to pay him more money than they did last year. And I don't think they're going to be able to go through the incentive-based contract like they did in 2023, just because Tyron Smith played himself to a better deal. And he knows there is a team out there like the Kansas City Chiefs who is a great fit, who he could win a Super Bowl with, and who are likely going to be willing to pay up for Tyron Smith without making it all about the incentives. So if Tyron Smith does return, what does that mean for you if you draft a first-round offensive lineman? I think it's a fair question to ask, but ultimately, if he is your guy, he is your guy, right? If a tackle or a guard is your best player available, you do have a need, because Tyron Smith might not be playing for much longer. He might get hurt, as he has every season since 2015. So picking a lineman does make sense. It's all about being willing to pay the price of maybe not playing whoever you pick in the first round right away, not having him be an immediate impact maker. However, this is a guy who could absolutely be a plug-and-play type player, in my opinion, in year one. Now, moving on to round number 2, I do have a player that I watched very few tape of, but man, he is on the rise. He is Destin Adams over on ADZ Sports, number 2 linebacker. He is James Foster's top linebacker, and I'm talking about Edgerrin Cooper from Texas A&M. Let me tell you that this guy is slowly climbing the draft boards from what I've seen from multiple experts, and they all seem to agree with the why. And it's pretty evident when you turn on some Texas A&M tape, and that is the guy runs fast. Like, he is athletic as heck. And that might not be true for every other linebacker in this year's draft class, where you are concerned about maybe not having the upside while having a lot to worry about. And for example, Peyton Wilson, man, some people are concerned about the knees and all that. With Edgerrin Cooper, the real concern is, sure, his size, but also pretty much everyone agrees that he could add some weight. Like, he's built to add some weight. He's not a player that has exactly like thin shoulders or anything like that. He has the frame to add some weight, but he does need it. Right now, he does rank 11th in his weight percentile. However, man, this is somebody that I'm looking forward to seeing how he does test in the NFL scouting combine. And according to just James Foster here, he has long arms, right? And as I said, with a frame to add more mass, he has outstanding range to chase down back ball carriers and float at sideline to sideline. He has a quick response, right, and diagnosis of run concepts. And you can see this when, teams run counter and stuff. Like, he knows exactly where to go on tape, and he closes in on ball carriers with ease. It's like one of those players that seems like he's teleporting at times, depending on the competition. And one stat that was intriguing to me was the 10 sack stat, right? Led the FVS among linebackers with 10 sacks in 2023. Now, off the bat, that made me think I like that for Mike Zimmer, right? Who is a coach who is going to want to have his linebackers rush the passer with A-gap blitzes and all that. I will say you don't see much of that in Cooper's tape, but you see the traits for that. Like, he gets to the quarterback rushing off of the edge, not exactly from the A gaps, but he gets there quickly, just like you see in every other area of his game. Now, most of his QB hits and most of his QB sacks do come from a QB spy method for Edgar and James. And as James Foster says on the A to Z Sports Film Room channel, which, by the way, you should subscribe to, he says, hey, this is not something that you do in the NFL. A lot of people like to say, hey, man, you got to get a QB spy on this quarterback, and every mobile quarterback should be countered with a QB spy, according to a lot of people. And that's just something that does not really happen in today's NFL, where every skill position player should worry you and you should be worried about doubling people and stuff. But again, he does show the traits where you can see, one, the speed to close in on whoever he's targeting, right? Whether it's a vault carrier or the QB. You see the explosiveness in the fact that, hey, it's not built up speed, as they call it. He just goes fast off of his stance if he's from the edge, for example. And you see very efficient eyes that allow him to not get caught up in traffic if there's pulling linemen, if there's whatever. And he's got the hand usage as well. One of the things that he wasn't asked to do a lot in Texas A&M was cover, basically, and that's massive in the NFL. But again, you go back to the trades with these prospects and you're like, all right, he can cover because he can play with that range, because he can play with that explosiveness. He can catch up with the receivers and all that. So this is somebody, man, that, hey, I would be looking forward to if he's there in round 2. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. The Cowboys do not solve their need. They do not fix their linebacker need in April. Like, if they go into the NFL draft needing a starting linebacker, they've already lost the battle, because they should do that in free agency, because it's a big enough need and a bad enough need where you cannot risk it, with the player that you want being there at the right time in the NFL draft. You got to go into the draft having signed or added at least 2 linebackers in March, unless you are super high on Damon Clark and you're like, he's going to be my starter next year next to whoever I sign. And maybe you have the Marvin Overshown coming back for a second year. Like, sure, it would still be a position of need, though, if the Cowboys enter the draft with just the 1 linebacker added in free agency. I think they should be looking at adding 2 of them, and then even more in the NFL draft, because in day 2, you might find some good value on them, like Edgar James, for example, at pick 56th. Now, he is on the rise, so these might change from today to April. But right now, his expected draft position per grinding the mocks is 50th. So this is a website that pulls together a lot of data from experts' mock drafts, from fans' mock drafts, but, obviously using a weighted average, I would guess. And we talked to Grinding the Mocks, by the way, last year, which was an amazing interview. I'm hoping to have him back again here on the show, Benjamin. Should be a fun conversation again, but maybe it will be best to wait a little bit until draft season is relatively closer. But my point being, man, Cooper has a chance. Edgerrin Cooper has a chance to be available when the Cowboys are on the clock for the 2nd round. Let's see what you guys have to say. Man, Toxic says, I hope that we take a tight end in round 1, 2, and 4. Obviously, Toxic joking with fans' emotions after the Cowboys took Luke Schoonmaker in round 2 of last year's draft. Man, I was looking at this graph from Jason Fitzgerald, who runs Over the Cap and does a fantastic job at it. Let me try to pull it up. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pull it up because I'm not a fluid producer like that, but I can tell you about it. So he had a round one tight end list and what happened to them and their rookie outcomes, right? So Kyle Pitts is active, right? That is his contract status right now. TJ Hawkinson was traded. Eric Ebron, holy smokes, what a name, huh? I didn't remember Eric Ebron. Terminated. OJ Howard did expire his contract. Noah Fant was traded. Tyler Eifert was also expired. Evan Ingram also expired. Dalton Kincaid remains active, obviously from last year. Hayden Hurst was traded. David Njoku was extended. Just not a lot of success out of first round tight ends. 12.5% of active players who were extended. 50% did not complete the rookie contract out of that list. And 75% did not stay past their rookie deal. Because Eifert came back as an unrestricted free agent after his deal expired, right? So, man, one of those situations where you just have very little success stories at tight end if you take them in the first round. Cowboys are set, fortunately, with Jake Ferguson, but they could get better at tight end too. And even though Cowboys are in a funny situation, both at tight end and defensive tackle, because I saw somebody here, I think it was Cam. Cam said, Tavondre Sweat, right? He's somebody that a lot of people like. Big nose tackle, super sized nose tackle who maybe even if you try to get him to lose weight, you wouldn't be able to just because he's that big. But Tavondre Sweat, you could take him, right? Round one or round two, whatever you want, just for the sake of this exercise. And you could take a tight end in round two. And they're not going to take a tight end in round two. Let's say fourth round, you take a tight end that you like. Speaking of the Cowboys here, you would be giving up quickly on your 2023 draft picks because you are in a situation where, sure, you do take the best player available always, but also if you take a tight end within this context for Dallas, you better like him. And because you just took Schoonmaker last year with a second round pick, and suddenly you're going to have three solid or three solid or drafted tight ends on your team, right? And all that I'm trying to say is I'm looking forward to seeing if they're willing to give up on that draft class that quickly, right? What is the Cowboys' stance on Mazi Smith going into 2024? Because you and I can talk all we want about Mazi's weight and the fact that they shouldn't have asked him to drop it. But we also need to ask, well, if he does add the 30 pounds, what did the Cowboys see in him early on in the year and even in training camp that maybe they didn't like, that maybe they were, we didn't realize that he was never going to do this or that, right? Looking forward to seeing if they are aggressive in giving up in Mazi and in Schoonmaker, which I believe would be the two players that you would be giving up on if you address those positions. Now, that being said, man, I don't mind if they do. Like, if they do, that means they're being proactive, and sure, it will suck to give up in players that quickly. But also, if they add Tavondre Sweat, you cannot tell me that the team did not get better, because it absolutely does in that scenario. And the same goes for somebody like a tight end if you do add the right tight end, right? There's no question in my mind that you could add a day 3 prospect at that position and potentially have him battle Luke Schoonmaker for the number 2 job in the team, right? Because Jake has secured number 1. That much is obvious by now. But number 2 could still be up for grabs if you add somebody else, because Schoonmaker didn't do anything to secure tight end 2 as a rookie. Now, that wouldn't be exactly disappointing if we were talking about the top job, right? The starting gig, which belongs to Jake Ferguson. But it is somewhat disappointing talking about tight end 2 and talking about the fact that I'm not sure if Schoonmaker is tight end 2 for Dallas in 2024. Because he was an underwhelming rookie last year. So yeah, man. Anthony says first 3 picks. Let's take all linebackers. Man, Anthony, I understand where your head is at, and I don't blame you for it. But I go back to what I said with man. If they go ahead and they do something like that, right? If they double dip at linebacker in the first 2 days of the NFL draft, that means you didn't get the linebackers in free agency. And I'm sorry, but man, you gotta take those free agents because you need some veteran linebackers badly. You need guys that can step in and be ready to go. And I'm not sure you will get that on Edgerrin Cooper. I'm not sure you will get that on Peyton Wilson or Trotter. I'm not sure you get that in any of the linebackers available in this year's class. Toxic says, Mo, so when this all-in predictably ends in a train wreck, will fans actually see that the Jones are the catalyst of issues of this team? They are the wigglings. I'll disagree with you, Toxic, in the sense that we're here. I think casual fans, diehard fans, even media, not all members of media, but most media members, like, I think we have gotten to a point where we just are on the same page regarding the Joneses being the issue on this team. Not only that, I think slowly but surely we're moving past the, oh man, when Stephen Jones is out, when Stephen Jones takes over the team, we're going to be fine. We now know collectively that Stephen Jones is going to be worse, probably. Mark Aaron says, smart fans already know. I hope they do anyways. I think this is not about the smart fans anymore. I think it's about the casual fans as well. I think pretty much everyone is on the same page by now. Travis, shout out to him. He says, Sweat would fit in our rotation perfectly. Yeah, man. Tavondre Sweat would be fun. He's good. He's fun. He's good. Sign me up for Sweat, even if they take him at 24th overall, because he's a tackle, so there's going to be a learning curve, but he's somebody that just gives you that size right away. And we've talked a lot about Mike Zimmer working several types of defenses and maybe being able to play more too high coverage. If you're going to play too high coverage and you're not going to be loading the box, you got to get that right. You got to get the stopping the run without loading the box aspect of defense right in 2024, which is something that was not the case in 2023 and during Quinn's years in Dallas. So we'll see what happens. Before I leave you guys tonight, though, quick news. The Cowboys, according to, who reported this? It was reported that the Cowboys are not expected to tag. It was Adam Schefter from ESPN. Not expected to tag free agent to be running back Tony Pollard, which would be for a $12.1 million cost. Titans won't tag Derrick Henry. Chargers won't tag Austin Eckler. The Giants won't tag Saquon Barkley. So just an unsurprising stance from NFL teams heading into the tag deadline, which will be March the 5th, next Tuesday. So from tomorrow on 8 days. Not a surprise. I think the Cowboys will ace this decision if they don't use the franchise tag. It's going to be a flooded running back market in free agency and also a flooded running back draft class in day 2 and day 3 of the NFL draft. So it's going to be a different approach at running back. You're not likely to have a running back 1. You're going to have a committee, chances are. I do question, however, how is that going to be built? Is that going to be made out of a veteran that you add in free agency for a lower cost and a draft pick, and maybe Rico Dowdle comes back, or Deuce Vaughn is your running back 3, plus Hunter Lipke at fullback, of course? Or did you just double dip at the position in the NFL draft and be like, hey, here we go. We've got 2 rookies and Deuce Vaughn ready to man the running back spot. Or maybe would you just draft somebody and the Cowboys maybe trust Rico Dowdle more than we do, and they're like, draftee, Rico Dowdle and Deuce Vaughn. I'm really intrigued about what the running back position looks like next season, because I think there's so many paths you can take. At least I would go get a veteran free agent that I can just be like, hey, man, I'm going into the NFL draft. And if I don't take one, it's going to be worrisome, but I cannot take one, right? I can live with that decision and be okay in 2024. But it's one of those things, man, that it's crazy about the draft and the free agency period where you're like, you just gotta be able to take care of as many needs you can in free agency, and then add on top of that, when the NFL draft comes around. Shout out to Alejandro Gasca, who says, hablas mejor inglés que español, which means you talk English better than you do Spanish, which I don't know how I should take that, Alejandro. Yeah, I'm going to choose to take it as a compliment, but you might also be saying you suck at speaking your native language. I'm just kidding, man. I'm just kidding, obviously. Thank you, Alejandro. I appreciate you, man. And shout out to all of you, Clayton, Sean, everyone, for joining the show tonight. This is it for the night, though. I'll see you tomorrow night here on A to Z Sports Dallas primetime, 8 p.m. Central. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll have some fun. Fun week of content here on the show. I'll see you tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Hit the like button for me. Bye-bye.